Hello, 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 once again, all my fellow patriots and you filthy leftist stalkers out there. You're listening to Angela's Soapbox. I'm Angela Box. Okay. My fiance said to me the other day, I was doing my show notes last night because I tape my podcast and the Saturday show on Wednesdays. And I know, guys, there's a lot that can go on between today and Saturday, but it is what it is. Anyway, I was like, I don't even know where to start. And I always say that, but he goes, well, maybe you should try and do a theme for every show. And I'm like, yeah, in theory, that's a great idea, but I have a pinball brain. So in actuality, that doesn't really work for me, but we're going to give it a shot. Let's just, honestly, early voting has started. I want to kind of start with that. And I want to start with the shenanigans that these people have prepared. So let's give the sea turtle killing plastic straw. We got Maricopa County. We've got all these swing states going, gosh, it's gonna take days, maybe weeks before we find out who won the election. So, I mean, F around and find out. I don't think the American people are buying it this time around. So let's talk about it. Okay. I was just on X. I didn't say Twitter. I'm learning. I was just on X, and basically there is a new Maricopa County, which was one of the most egregious counties in the 2020 election with the steal. And obviously, I've said this a million times, and it's frustrating when you talk to people who are on the surface intelligent people and smart people, and you say to them, "Listen, let's just break down what happened on election night of 2020, shall we?" At 10:30 at night, Eastern time, every single swing state shut down at the exact same time. And the reasons they gave for those shutdowns were all different, but the effect was the same. They all shut down. It's never happened before. One of the excuses they gave, of course, was there was a water main leak in the State Farm Arena in Georgia. Another reason they gave was, everyone's just so sleepy. It's time to go home. And the media just was like, okay, that's what we're doing. We're shutting everything down. Like, no questioning about it. No, hey, this is a little weird. And then, of course, everyone goes to sleep. And those of us who are MAGA and those of us who voted for Trump in 2020, we're like, okay, something is really sus here. They're doing something. And, of course, whenever we woke up in the morning, we saw that at 1:30, 2:30 in the morning, there were all these ballot drops for Joe Biden, where 98% of these ballots went for him. And we were like, that's weird because you all shut everything down. So where are these ballots coming from and who's putting them in the machines? And then, of course, as time goes on, we see Fulton County, one in particular incident where a woman named Ruby Freeman, who's one of the election workers, and another gentleman and Ruby Freeman's daughter you see on camera them pulling out suitcases of ballots at like 1:30, 2:30 in the morning and just starting to drop all of them in there. And you could see as the totals went in that 98% of them went for Biden. And as someone who watched literally every single second of the Mike Lindell cybersecurity forum, where I learned about people like Colonel Phil Waldron, Seth Keshel, who I've interviewed both of them. They were like, yeah, this thing was totally stolen. And both of them broke down just how it was stolen. One of Phil Waldron's things that he did was he looked at the overseas vote switching. So they showed in real time what was going on with votes from different swing states that were going overseas, and then the votes getting flipped in cyberspace and then sent back. Again, the Voldemort machines, and I don't say the name of the machines because I don't want to get sued for $1 billion, but you know what I'm talking about. The Voldemort machines, the Voldemort software, they're switching votes, and they're doing it again, guys. They're doing it again. So when I say that, it's really frustrating to me if you just look at what happened in 2020, that everybody shut down at the same time for different reasons, but all of them were suspicious reasons. Right there and then, people should have been like scratching their heads. But we have a situation where the majority of the deep state, all of the deep state, they didn't want Trump to win. The polls were such where they had Biden up by, 7, 8. in all these polls. So they thought, okay, the polls are matching what we're going to do or what we think the vote's going to be. And then, of course, when Trump overperformed those polls, that's when they had to shut everything down, because they realized that when they shut everything down, Trump was ahead in all the swing states, every single one of them, with ranges of like 50,000 votes to, I think, over 500,000 votes in some swing states. So they realized they were in trouble. Uh-oh, Trump's getting ready to win this thing. Our polling is not going to account for this win, so we've got to quickly shut everything down and make sure that Joe Biden wins. I mean, I'm 100% admittedly a conspiracy theorist at this point. And if you're not at this point, you're not paying attention. But that alone, that they shut everything down and they gave different reasons for doing it, but the effect was the same. Every single swing state, Trump was ahead, and every single swing state shut down. Forget all the other stuff that we now know of the thousands and thousands of people who swore under penalty of perjury, the anomalies they witnessed firsthand, the trucks of ballots being trucked in at 2:30 at night in Wayne County, Michigan, which is where Detroit is. And then they said that, oh, this is pizza for the workers. It's like, again, hang on a minute. Y'all shut everything down at 10:30 Eastern. So what workers are you delivering pizza to at 2:30 in the morning? Things that should be obvious were all called, you're just a conspiracy theorist. And it's frustrating as someone who looks at things logically, but also understands what these people are all about, but looks at things logically. And logically, 1 + 1 = 2. And the left was trying to tell us, and the media was trying to tell us, that no, these all went to court, and Trump lost in all of these cases. It's like, well, they were all turned away. They were all denied based on standing, which, again, it's weird that the president of the United States, who was a defendant in many of these cases, or voters that have been disenfranchised in these cases, they didn't have standing. Like, make that make sense. So these were not looked at on the merits. They were looked at because of standing. And so the people that like to say that we're all crazy, they're all saying, oh, the courts looked at everything. Now, that brings us to what's going on now. Trump has urged his followers, has urged MAGA to get out there and early vote. And, as someone who always early votes, I just do because I don't want to deal with the lines on election day. But traditionally, Republicans, especially when we understand the cheating system, traditionally Republicans have voted on election day. And so obviously what we've seen with what they've done on election days, where, machines break and they run out of paper and all the shenanigans they do, or lines are, 3-4 hours long and, 90% of the machines aren't working, like all the things that they do, Trump's like, listen, let's head it off at the pass. And Republicans are finally starting to play the game that Democrats have been playing. We're going to be legally ballot chasing. We're going to be legally ballot harvesting in places that it's legal. We're doing it legally. And we're doing early voting now. And Republicans are like, you know what? We're not going to let you do what you did to us in 2020. So I'm going to tell you straight up, they are tripping right now. Because in Texas, where I live, my fiance and I went and voted on the first day. Now, admittedly, we went after lunch, but it was about 1:00. So, around lunchtime, but a little bit after lunchtime. And the line was, yes, it went really quickly. It took us about 15 minutes to get through the line, but I've never seen a line like that, early voting, ever. Same, and if you go on X, all over X is people saying, I'm waiting 2.5 hours. I'm waiting an hour. I'm waiting 40 minutes. These are all Trump voters. And they're all saying, I voted for Trump, or I'm a first-time Trump voter. I've never voted for a Republican. I'm voting for Trump. The Democrats are now flipping out because they're seeing that the early vote numbers, Republicans are crushing it in early votes. Now, obviously, you can't determine who people are voting for, but I think it's a pretty safe guess that most of those Republican voters are voting for Trump. Now, I would submit to you that probably a lot of those Harris voters are voting for Trump, too. A lot of those disaffected Democrats, those union members, those people that are like, we are not down for what these people have done to this country over the last 4 years. And so it's no surprise that places like Maricopa County, which was one of the most egregious counties in the United States in 2020, with the vote switching, with the shutting everything down, and of course Brett Baier was famously hated by conservatives for the last 4 years because he at the Fox Opinion Desk in 2020, like 2 minutes after Arizona closed, was like, "Oh, Fox is calling Arizona for Joe Biden," and people were like, "What do you mean you're calling Arizona for Joe Biden? Like, the polls just closed." We're going to get to the Brett Baier interview probably in the next segment, but let's just put it this way. It's a 4-alarm fire for the left right now because Republicans are beating Democrats in early voting, and that has never happened. And people like Mark Halperin, who, if you don't know who Mark Halperin is, let me give you a quick 30-second who Mark Halperin is. Mark Halperin, I believe, worked for ABC News. He was an establishment journalist. He got caught up in Me Too a couple of years ago. I think he got some accusations that he, was a little too touchy-feely with people. As someone who's worked with men, I mean, there is always flirtation. There's always things that go on in the workplace. I mean, that's just how it happens. That's men and women working together. You're going to get that. But Mark Halperin kind of got swept up in this whole Me Too thing. So he was kind of persona non grata in establishment media for a while. He resurfaced on Newsmax. I don't know if he's still on Newsmax or not, but he's certainly doing independent YouTube right now. And so his YouTube that he's doing is doing a deep dive into these numbers, into these polls, and he's warning his former colleagues, like, listen, I'm just giving you straight up data, okay? I'm not on anybody's side. I don't have a team here. I'm actually trying to be an impartial journalist. And I'm telling you guys right now, the polls are not accurately reflecting the Trump vote out there. They always skew to the left. Atlas Intel, Rasmussen, there's only a few polls right now that are showing Trump in the lead. Harris is still ahead by about, 1.5 in the Real Clear Politics average. Again, those polls are skewing 5-6 points to the left. So if that's the case, then Trump's actually going to win the popular vote. And that's what Mark Halperin is warning his colleagues in the media. Like, guys, I'm just brace for impact here. And so the more that early voting goes on, the more that the left is signaling that we're not going to be able to count all the votes on election night, and it might take a week to count the votes. Guys, that's not going to fly anymore. Like, the American people are wise to what these people have done. We lived through 2020. We lived through the Biden era. We lived through what the Democrats will do in order to stay in power, which is to flood the zone with illegal aliens, to cheat in elections. Like, we know what they're going to do, and the American people are wise to it. So the swing states, the leftist swing state counties like Maricopa, Fulton, Wayne, etc., that are basically signaling that it's going to take weeks in order to count it. It's not going to work, guys, because the early vote totals, Halperin is saying, guys, the early vote could determine that Trump is the winner before Election Day, because the numbers don't lie. I'm going to get to this more when we get back, but this is very fascinating because this is turning out to be a worst case scenario for Democrats, which, of course, I'm here for. You're listening to Angela's Soapbox. I'll be right back. Welcome back to Angela's Soapbox. Okay, so let's pick up on this idea of what Halperin is saying. And again, Halperin's not a shill. He's trying to play it pretty down the middle. I mean, they hate him. It was wild. I was watching his live stream yesterday, and he looked really shaken because I think he's like, the temperature's really hot in this country right now. Things are kind of at a boiling point, fever pitch wise. The left they kind of see everything crumbling. And what you're watching, I would submit to you, is God in action, karma in action. These people are totally corrupt. These people know they stole the 2020 election. They know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are illegitimate. They should not be in there. And so even though they try and lie to themselves and pretend that, these baseless conspiracy theories, look for them to flip real quick after the election, especially if we find out that early vote is going to basically go for Trump. If we find out that Republicans have overtaken early voting totals, and by election day, we see that Republicans are still ahead in early votes, and then you look at the outstanding number of voters, ballots that could still be out there, like Democrats there's no amount of shutting the swing states down that's going to work this time because people are wise to their game. And so look for the Democrats. This is what they're going to do. So, of course, in 2020, they said that anybody that questioned the most secure election ever, according to CISA, according to Chris Krebs and the establishment media and the deep state, everything's great. Joe Biden, who didn't campaign and who can barely string two sentences together, and his literal idiot running mate Kamala Harris, like they got more votes than Barack Obama. Joe Biden is more popular than Barack Obama, the first black president. It's funny. Like if Obama and team and the deep state didn't have so much writing on Joe Biden, I would be like, hold up. If I was Obama, I'd be like, hold up, dude. Like, I'm sorry. You didn't get more votes than me, Barack Obama, the first black president. Like, let's keep it 100 here. But they had to like toe the company line on this. They had to say that Joe Biden got more votes than any presidential candidate in American history. That's why they had to shut everything down. That's why they had to flood the zone with 98% Biden ballots that were, meticulously filled in. Like all the things that we know they did. Anyway, but look for the switch to happen on election night. So if they see that early voting, these are big ifs. I mean, Democrats are really traditionally great at turning out their voters. Republicans have been playing catch up this cycle. And I think for once, I feel like we've got some good leadership with Michael Whatley and Lara Trump. Are they perfect? No. Do they have some squishes on the legal side of it? Yes. But I think from what we had with Ronna McDaniel to now, we're really kind of doing the same playbook that Democrats have done. We're doing ballot chasing. We're doing, again, like I mentioned, ballot harvesting or places where it's legal. We're doing mail-in ballots where it's legal. We're urging people to early vote. We're flooding the zone with early voting. That's why you're seeing all these, hour-long lines, which has never happened before. So Republicans are doing a good job of catching up to what Democrats have done for so long and have done well for so long. And that's why you're going to see a switch on election night. So they're going to do the Orwellian switcheroo. They're going to double speak it like you've never seen before. They're going to memory hole the idea that that the 2020 election was the most secure in American history, and you can't do widespread election fraud. Like that just can't happen in the United States of America. Everything is so precinct by precinct wide. You can't switch enough ballots. You can't dump in enough ballots to switch it. Like that's just not going to happen. There's too many safeguards. So all the things they told us about 2020, they're going to flip on its face, and it's going to be like immediately. It's going to kind of be like they're in 2016 when, and I've said this before, if you have not read the book Shattered, and admittedly, I've not read the whole book, but Shattered is fascinating because in the first 25 pages, the authors, it basically is about how, Hillary Clinton was going to shatter the glass ceiling. And if you remember in 2016, her watch party, and I think it was in New York City, I don't know if it was at Madison Square Garden or not, but all of her supporters were there, and they had this faux glass ceiling that when Hillary won the election, she was going to shatter the glass ceiling. And of course, the cheating they had set up, the algorithms they had programmed into these machines, which again, people in 2020, when these things started to happen, when you can see the votes being switched in real time, I mean, I can't, it's too much of a rabbit hole to go down, but you know what I'm talking about here. The votes being switched in real time, the algorithms they had set up, the cheating system they had set up in 2020, they thought was going to cover any kind of a Trump turnout model. And the polls had set up a Hillary Clinton win. She had a 92% chance of winning according to Polymarket. Like she was going to win. So the polls had set her up for that. They had their cheating system set up that they had set up for many, many years, decades, whatever. The uniparty where they switch back and forth with, okay, Democrats can win this election and Republicans, you can have this one. And, they just go back and forth, which is why the Republican Party has been so worthless. And it's only, because of Donald Trump that the Republican Party has even remotely a backbone anymore, which is why they want to take him down. Because they don't like this. They don't like the uniparty not being in power because it was pretty good for them. They all got to make a lot of money. They all got to stay in power. They all got to go to the same cocktail parties. And, it was just back and forth, back and forth. Anyway, so in Shattered, if you have not read this, I will give you the synopsis. The whole idea of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, obviously they set it up prior to the win. They were doing their insurance policy. We know about the text messages with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, the number 2 at the FBI, talking about, just in case we've got this insurance policy, and we've worked with the Clinton campaign on it, like all the things they did, the Crossfire Hurricane, the spying on the Trump campaign. And in Shattered, they let the cat out of the bag at page 25. And it talked about how Robbie Mook, her campaign manager, was discussing this idea that the Russians helped Trump win. It was literally in her book, and the media likes to pretend that doesn't exist. It's wild to me. It's in black and white where they talk about how, we're going to say that the Russians helped Trump win. It's crazy. So after she lost, that's the immediate thing they started to do. And obviously we're all old enough to remember what they did to Trump for his entire 4 years of his presidency. So look for that to happen again in 24. But again, people are not buying it anymore. And these people acting like that they're going to be able to shut things down for days as they, quote, count the ballots, when in Argentina they can do it in one night, France they can do it in one night. And when you look at these states, it's well, you have far less population than an entire country. So why can't you do this? And isn't it funny? It's always the same, it's always the swing states. So this making it too big to rig, which is what Trump has been talking about since he got the nomination, or since, people understood that he was going to win the GOP primary, and no one even had a chance against him. He said, after he got the nomination, he's like, listen, this election, this is it, guys. This is it. If you believe that Trump allowed Biden to take power and allowed Kamala Harris to take power, obviously there was no coup. Trump didn't try and stop Joe Biden, didn't try and say, listen, we've got the evidence here. The military is going to enforce this. No, he didn't do that because the American people were not on board yet. Obviously, January 6th is still their dog whistle they always do, and saving democracy and all that crap. If he had done in 2020 what legally he could have done, which is to open the books on the 2020 election, which is to quickly say, listen, this is how they did it. This is how they cheated. The American people would not have stood for it because we were not awake enough yet. Now, obviously, people like me and people like you, we've been awake. But the vast majority of the American people were not. That's why January 6th, that's why what they did on January 6th to those patriots, ushering them in, setting them up, throwing them in jail for the last 3 years, that's why it was successful, because that had to happen in order for the Republicans to not go to the floor of the House of Representatives, the Senate, from the swing states and say, listen, we've got X, Y, and Z evidence that shows that there are at least, there's things that some of the milk is not clean. We need to send these back to the states to look at this. We cannot certify these elections. That's why January 6th happened. So now we've got a situation where you're going to see the Democrats and the media quickly. They're going to go from saying that everything is the most secure it's ever been. This, elections cannot be rigged. This is all a conspiracy theory, to Trump stole this election. So here's what's going to happen next. I think Trump is, if you believe that this has been a movie that we all watched, if you believe that there is some sort of a master plan, if you will, that has been in place for the last 4 years in order to wake the American people up, if you believe that, then you know what the plan is next. The plan next is Trump and team are going to say, cool. Well, you know what? If you think that foreign actors hacked this election, then we should, that's a very serious charge. And we should definitely do the election over in one day with paper ballots, 2 people on the ballot. That's it. No other people on the ballot, just a national election, Trump or Harris. Let's do it. And watch the Democrats balk at that suggestion because they know this literal and political whore who is collapsing in just astonishing ways. The same result's going to happen. In fact, I would submit to you it's going to be an even bigger landslide for Trump. So obviously the Democrats never wanted to open the books on the 2016 elections. They never wanted, Clinton going around and the media going around saying that Trump stole this election and Clinton won and blah, 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 blah. Well, then why didn't they say we should go in and do some forensic audits? We should go into these precincts in these swing state areas and open the books and look at the machines, look at the algorithms. Not one of them ever did that, because then it would have been, the jig would be up and they would have seen, oh, actually, gosh, there were a lot of vote switchings from Trump to Clinton. Can't have that. So they just had to run with it and the media had to carry their water for us. Obviously in 2020, Trump and Republicans are like, hey, let's open the books. Let's do forensic audits. And instead of doing that, they're throwing people like Tina Peters into jail. Tina Peters, and I will remind you all of this, the Mesa County, Colorado county clerk. She was, I'm trying to give a quick a synopsis as I can here. Tina Peters was basically given information that she needed to secure she needed to take a picture of the server before Dominion was coming in to wipe the system. And she got a heads up that Dominion was going to come in with the Secretary of State of Colorado. I don't know who that person is, but they're a leftist. And they were going to come in and they were going to wipe the server. They were going to wipe it, which is illegal. You can't do that. You have to keep election data for, I believe, 18 months. You're not allowed to do that, but they did it anyway. And so Tina Peters took a picture of that, and the media and it showed that there were vote switching, that there was tampering with the vote. And so she took it to, I believe she took it to the sheriff of Mesa County and was like, listen, the Secretary of State isn't doing anything about this. Here's the evidence. And what they did to her was the government of Colorado, the state government of Colorado, took her to court saying she was interfering with the election, and some leftist judge, some disgusting leftist hack, threw this woman who was just trying to secure the Mesa County data so that Dominion could not come in with the help of the Colorado Secretary of State and wipe clean that server, which would have proven that they cheated. All she was doing was trying to secure that. They threw her in jail for 9 years, okay? So they're not playing around here, all right? So this is why Trump has been saying, we've got to make it too big to rig. We have to. We have to make it so they cannot do what they did in 2020. And I guarantee you guys they're going to try. All right, let's get to some more stuff when I get back from my water break. You're listening to Angela's Soapbox. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Angela's Soapbox. Probably going to be a little bit of a shorter segment this time in the last segment because I'm running over. Because I really do think it's wild. It's so interesting, isn't it, to watch karma in real time and watch these people get what's coming to them in real time. Now, obviously, we on Earth are not God, and we are not going to be meting out eternal justice to these people, but God is. And it's wild to watch. It's like, do these people not believe? It's either that I can't figure it out. Like, they know they're cheating. They know that they've done bad things, like really bad things. So it's like they are either atheists, they're praying that there's no God, they're sadly mistaken. And they, it would be like, at this point, with everything that's coming out, like with Diddy and now this Abercrombie and Fitch guy and Epstein and, all the things they do, the deep state does to keep these people in check. You would think like that as these things are coming out, they'd be like, maybe there is a God, because we seem to be getting some karma right now. So they're hoping there's not a God, or they're satanic. Like it's one or the other, because you cannot continue to do bad things and have nothing happen to you. And that's why it's really fascinating to watch the total collapse of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And Kamala Harris last week, I taped the show before she did her Brett Baier interview. But I got to tell you, I had no expectations for that. Like, none. I was like, this is going to be a softball. Brett Baier, again, famously was the guy who called Arizona for Biden in 2020, and he pissed off MAGA like you can't believe. Obviously, Fox News, the dirtbag Paul Ryan, who I cannot believe. Again, I cannot believe the things we know now that we didn't know 10 years ago, when all of us went out in 2012 and voted for Romney and Ryan. Like, again, went to the mat for these two, like supported them. Same with Bush and Cheney, etc. Obviously, the things we know now about the Uniparty changed our mind about these people. So I didn't have any good feelings about this Fox interview. Again, Paul Ryan sits on the head of Fox Corps. I thought Brett Baier was just going to give her another softball interview. He did not. It was a drubbing, and it was really wild. Like, I remember going on X and being like, someone sent a story to me, and they were like, "Oh my God, did you see the Brett Baier interview?" And I'm like, "No, but let me go look at it." So I go on X, and people were like, "Whoa!" Like, we did not expect that. Like, it was the first interview that she had where there were actual questions asked to her, and she was not able to word salad her way out of it. She tried, but Brett Baier was not allowing her to do that. And so she licked her wounds, and after that interview, she keeps collapsing in the polls. Every time she speaks, she goes lower because she's in a real catch-22. The Harris campaign is in a huge catch-22 because they're like, okay, we tried to do the Biden keep her in the basement. We tried to keep her away from the media. She still hasn't done a live press conference. And Trump's done several press conferences, and he does media appearances all the time, even though they're acting like he doesn't, which is weird because he's out doing media all the time. And Friday, he's going to be doing Joe Rogan, who obviously is like the most listened to person right now in media. And that's going to just be blow the roof off everything. I mean, if you thought Elon Musk's interview with Trump was huge, like, I'm sure Joe Rogan's like, hold my beer. Let's see what the numbers are with this. But he's doing media all over the place, like huge. He's made himself available. So is JD Vance. And every time JD Vance goes, he just destroys the media. But Harris has not been able to do that because she's a dumbass. All right. She's an idiot. She's the epitome of a DEI hire. And obviously Biden admitted that she is a DEI hire. And I think the one brilliant thing we could say Joe Biden did was putting her on the ticket, because it's like it was a great job guarantee for him for at least 3.5 years, where Democrats are like, all right, Joe Biden is this guy, he craps his pants. Like, he can't string two words together. But Kamala Harris is worse. So we can't put Kamala Harris in charge of anything because she's an even bigger idiot than Biden is. But they're both controlled and they're both deep state plants, whatever. Like, okay. So her pickle has been, if they keep her in the basement, the American people are like, listen, you don't have COVID to dine out on, for lack of a better word. You don't have COVID to keep her away from the public, okay? I know you tried. You tried the monkeypox and you tried the bird flu, and people are like, no, not doing it, not falling for it, no. So they can't keep her away from the people, but when they put her in front of the people, like, it's bad. And so her rallies have been these canned speeches that she says the exact same things on, Trump's Hitler, yada, 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 yawn, whatever. And then when she sits down with media, like, it's bad. And so every time she opens her mouth, her polls get lower and lower and lower. And now even establishment polls, even though they don't want to say that Trump's ahead, even though they don't want to say that he's going to win the popular vote, like, even polls like New York Times, Siena, and Trafalgar and Quinnipiac are like, ugh, we hate telling you guys this, but it is not looking good for KNEEPADS. So having her do this Brett Baier interview, like, I think it was akin to what they did with Biden and the debate. So they put Biden out with this debate. They pretended like they fluffed Biden, and they were like, oh yeah, you're going to do great against Trump. Like, you're going to kick his ass. You're so smart, whatever. And of course, he just completely fell apart. And then the calls started to get rid of Biden. Now, I will say the Brett Baer interview, I figured by this point a week later, I would figure that KNEEPADS would have been off the ticket. Like, I would have figured, okay, this is the way they're going to get rid of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, because, you know, Jazz Hands closeted Tim Walz and his beard Gwen Walz, who, funny enough, there was a campaign event in Maine yesterday, Tuesday, that they canceled. It was about abortion and, you know, whatever. Reproductive rights, aka killing babies up to 9 months in the womb. And they canceled it because evidently Gwen Walz and her psycho eyes, it's just not resonating with male voters. So it's hilarious. Like, they're trying to put everything now. And this is 100% similar to what my mole has been saying. They're going to lay everything on their failure at the feet of Tim Walz and Gwen Walz. So they're canceling events. Harris is, you know, preparing for softball interviews. She didn't do any events yesterday. And she sat down with Hallie Jackson of NBC, and Hallie Jackson gave her she's like, I'm with a friendly media outlet. Great. And she sucked there too. And I'm like, I'm sure they got the questions in advance, and they pretend that this is some sort of a hard-hitting interview. And everyone's like, okay, like, we're not buying it. It's not working. Okay. So everything they're doing is not working, and they are falling apart, ladies and gentlemen. And what you witnessed with the McDonald's stunt last week was even more chef's kiss delicious. And I'm going to talk about that when we get back from my last water break and whatever else I can shove in. You're listening to Angela's Soapbox. I will be right back. Welcome back to Angela's Soapbox. Okay, so let's talk about this McDonald's brilliant political stunt that Trump did. I mean, we gotta slow clap this. It was so great. I go on X and I'm like, what's going on with this McDonald's? And I'm gonna cop for a second to being a little dumb. Okay, maybe it's my hope and desire that maybe Trump really was able to sneak into a McDonald's, and, you know, obviously the Secret Service would have been there, but I was thinking, okay, maybe he really is just randomly giving out fries to people that are pulling up. But obviously they were all vetted, and they all had to go through background checks and all that. And, you know, it's funny because the left, I mean, it was such an epic troll on Trump's part, because obviously Kamala Harris has been lying and saying that she worked at McDonald's, and McDonald's Corporation has come out and they're like, while we don't have any information on every single franchise owner, there is no record of her working at McDonald's, like, ever. And does anyone think that this privileged brat daughter of two left-wing psycho professors in the Palo Alto area, which is where she was raised in Canada, she was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, like, does anyone think that this heifer is actually working the fries at 15 years old? Like, nobody believes that. And she hasn't been able to prove it. It's kind of like all of Tim Walz's lies. That once he came on the national stage, people started to go, that's not true. Like, your stolen valor claims, your claim that you're this big hunter, you can't even load a gun. Obviously, there's rumors about him and students. Like, I'm going to get into that because it has not been totally verified, but whatever. Like, all these things, same with Kamala Harris. Like, her lies, her stories are not adding up. And she's tried to dine out on this idea that she worked at McDonald's in order to ingratiate herself with the working class of America. It ain't working. Now, as someone, I've said this before, I can prove that I worked at Little Caesars. It was my first big girl job that I got a paycheck for. I have pictures. I mean, I've always been a big picture taker. I have over a dozen, like probably 20 photo albums of throughout time, like way before, you know, people were uploading to Facebook. I have physical photo albums, and I have lots of pictures of me working at Little Caesars, so I can prove it. All right. She can't prove it. And I'm sorry, but if it's your first job, Your parents are going to take pictures of you in your uniform. They just are, okay? So no, she didn't work at McDonald's. And so Trump trolling her on her birthday was so epic. And it caused such a meltdown of these people. And they're like, oh, this was a total political stunt. Trump shut down the McDonald's. It's like, yeah, of course he shut down the McDonald's. And again, for a second, I was like, oh my God, he's really giving fries to random people. These people are surprised. But of course, they had to shut the whole thing down. And when you looked at the people outside, the thousands of people that were there to witness this, I mean, again, he is beloved by the people. He is the people's president. It's kind of like, they talked about when Princess Diana was the people's princess. It's the same thing. Like, you can't fake that level of enthusiasm. So as hard as they are trying, when they're bussing their fake people in, it's just not working. Now, I want to talk about something that happened last week too that I wasn't able to get to, which is this idea that, again, it's a step back and miss the lightning situation here when it comes to abortion and the left. Gretchen Whitmer, who is awful and probably satanic, I don't know. She's one of the governors who shoved sick people into nursing homes in order to jack up the COVID death rate. The whole stunt she pulled a couple weeks ago with this left-wing podcaster, I think her name is Liz Plank, this mockery of the Eucharist, like in a Catholic state like Michigan. It's like, what are you doing, lady? Like, who told you this would be a good idea? Like, this is how in your face demonic they are at this point. And that's why I don't use that word lightly. Like, there's really no other way to look at it other than these people are like, they're letting their masks slip all over the place. Like Joe Biden screaming about how Trump needs to be locked up. Like, we need to lock him up. Like, they're letting their masks slip. Like, this is who they are. So Harris last week at some rally, there was a protester that got in, and she's talking about abortion and, we must protect reproductive freedoms. And, oh, by the way, she said in her Hallie Jackson interview that she would not support religious exemptions to abortion policies. So like the nuns that are being sued by Biden's Department of Justice for having faith-based refusal to perform abortions in Catholic hospitals. She's like, no, there should be no religious exemptions whatsoever. Not when it comes to, quote, fundamental freedom. So killing babies, you cannot have a religious exemption, just like they wouldn't allow you a religious exemption to not get your arm shoved full of a bioweapon, where more and more people are, quote, dying suddenly, and we're supposed to ignore that too. Anyway, so people are satanic. So she had a protester at her rally last week, and the protester screamed out, Christ is King and Jesus is Lord. And this heifer, without missing a beat, like, you think Kamala Harris can't think on her feet, and you think Kamala Harris, her brain starts glitching when she doesn't have a teleprompter in front of her. Well, when she's talking about abortion and killing babies, like, she's on point, okay? So this protester was like, Christ is King, Jesus is Lord. She stops her, baby killing speech she's giving, and she says, you're at the wrong rally, meaning you're not, being pro-life, you're not welcome at this rally. If you don't support killing babies in the womb, you need to go to the Trump rally. And she's like, you need to go to the much smaller rally down the street. It's like, okay, lady, you literally bust the same people in over and over again. People have receipts about that. Like, no one is buying that your rallies are as big as Trump's. Like, stop it. But the fact that she did that is wild to me. Like, again, that this is the hill on which they want to die. The hill of mutilating children's genitals. The hill of putting pornography, gay porn in front of kids in schools. The hill of abortion up to 9 months. This is the hill on which they are dying. And it really is the hill they are going to die on, because normal people, nope. They are not down for this. Now, I want to talk a little bit before I have to wrap here. Harris said something, KNEEPADS said something yesterday. And, they talk about this rhetoric. They talk about the rhetoric being ratcheted up by Donald Trump. And it's like, I don't know what Donald Trump you're listening to, but the only thing I hear from Trump and MAGA is that we want to make America great again, and we want to go back to the way things used to be, where we judge people based on the content of their character, where we had a sane immigration policy, where we had a situation where it doesn't matter what gender you are, race you are, that people can get along with each other. And Kamala Harris talks about how, we have more that unites us than divides us. Yeah, that's true. But then why are you going out and basically saying that Trump supporters are MAGA extremists and talk about January 6th and lying? This is what boggles my mind. Lying, saying that, 140 police officers were injured and some were killed. She said that in the NBC interview with Hallie Jackson. They're lying. There was no police officer killed. The one they're talking about, Brian Setnick, they pretend that he got hit with a fire extinguisher. Well, that isn't true. He died of a stroke days later. No officers were killed. The people that were killed were Roseanne Boyland, who were stomped and beat to get death by cops, and Ashley Babbitt, who was murdered by a police officer, Michael Byrd. Those are the people who died. And then one gentleman had a cardiac arrest during the melee. They just lie, and the media won't report it. She's literally saying that 140 police officers were stomped on and police officers were killed. And Hallie Jackson's like, tell me more, Senator KNEEPADS. Look, guys, there's some polling that I'm not trying to alarm anybody, because I do believe that God wins. And I do believe that we're going to make this too big to rig. And at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to do it. Okay. They're not going to be able to switch enough votes on election night. They're not going to be able to flip enough, dead people into voters. They're not going to be able to make enough overseas people switching like they're doing on Act Blue, like these ghost donors. They're not going to be able to do ghost voters like they are ghost donors with Act Blue. They're not going to be able to turn enough. So look for after election night, when they say that Trump stole it somehow and that we can't certify, what they want is a civil war. What they want is for MAGA to rise up and to say, no, you're not doing this. No, we are not going to allow you to steal another election. They want us to violently rise up, and we must resist the urge to do that. We must fight in the court of law. We must fight with information. We must fight using X and other free speech platforms, because they're not going to be able to do what they did in 2020. They do not have control of X. Twitter was their greatest weapon. Let's be honest. The greatest weapon, the greatest social media platform, period. That's where people are going for their news now. Not the media. They're going to X. They're going to people on the ground. They're going to independent pollsters like Rasmussen, who is saying, and he's giving the warning, that more than any other time period, people are worried that we're getting ready to have another civil war or another revolution. And if it happens, it happens. I don't think it's going to happen. Again, I think it's going to be, if we have a fair election, big if, it's going to be such a landslide for the good guys, that they're not going to be able to do that. So they're going to have to turn into plan B somehow. I don't know what plan B is for them, but they're not going to go down without a fight, because if Trump wins, if Trump gets in there, there's going to be so many congressional hearings into what these people have done when it comes to COVID, when it comes to the 2020 election, when it comes to human and child sex trafficking. Just those three things alone is going to blow everything wide open and going to be the most massive awakening that the world has ever seen. So just hang on, guys. Hang on and make sure you early vote. Don't wait until election day, because if you're in a state that they want to steal, they're going to have all kinds of shenanigans on election day. So get out and vote, wait in line, and do it. Early vote. All right, guys, that is my time. I'm so excited to see what the next few weeks are going to bring for our country and the world. And we know that God wins. And just remember, thy will be done. Until next time, everybody, keep kicking ass and taking names. Peace.